it was time to take action and to put caps in place that are going
Yeah,
to
but your caps only create a funnel through the private borrowing system.
That's not true.
Yes, that is what it will do. How else
It's
would somebody, if
putting the
if I wanted to get a professional degree
Ah.
and I'm capped and I can't borrow, then I have to, from a public source, then I have to go private. And that is what your administration is really trying to do, is trying to help enrich others on the backs of the American people. I yield back.
If you care about the future of nursing, college costs, and where your tax dollars are going, you need to hear what just happened in this exchange. Representative Ilhan Omar challenged Education Secretary Linda McMahon over new federal loan limits for graduate programs, arguing that the policy could make the nursing shortage worse. But McMahon pushed back hard. Before we break it all down, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because this debate raises a much bigger question. Are unlimited federal loans actually making education more affordable, or are they helping drive the price higher?
From the definition of professional degrees and capping their ability to receive federal loans. I know that in my home state of Minnesota, we're expecting to face a shortage of 30,000 nurses in the next 4 years. And I know that your home state of North Carolina, it is expected to see a shortage of 13,000. Our nurses obviously are limited in their capacity, they're overworked, and they're worried. So I know you said the decision is final, but I'm just trying to figure out if you can answer, why did you move forward with an action that you know is going to be creating a problem or worsening a problem that already exists?
Well, first of all, let me correct one thing. We did not remove any of these professions from a professional category. They were never characterized in the law, in the statute, as a professional category. So as these caps were put into place, and many professions were then being reviewed as to what constituted a professional category, guided by the definition of a professional degree from Congress. So that was the overview that we looked at as we were writing this new rulemaking, with the overall goal of putting caps in place that are going to reduce the cost of college.
How is that happening?
Well, I have a couple of articles here already that there are colleges.
What do they say?
They are saying that they are looking at reducing the cost of their graduate programs.
I know, but looking is not addressing the problem that we're currently seeing. What I am asking you is that you've made a decision that is currently making the problem worse.
That is not correct. Let me push back on that.
Are you saying the numbers in Minnesota that we're seeing or in North Carolina are not real?
Well, what I'm saying to you is there are shortages in those states, primarily in the undergraduate nursing program, which is not affected by this new rule and this new cap. Undergraduate programs are not affected at all by this cap.
I know, but
These are only graduate programs, so the shortage is not a result of this cap being put on. The shortage of nursing is that we don't have enough applicants into the nursing programs that are coming through our universities.
So instead of helping with the problem, you've decided to make it worse?
I don't think you ran when I talked about another way to get to an RN, an expedited program. You can get a 2-year certificate and then take the exam to become an RN.
My sisters are nurses. I do know how those things work. I'm asking you about the specific classification that you created that lowers the cap.
We didn't remove them from a professional designation.
I know, but address the cap issue when it comes to the
I just did, because I said it does not impact.
But you said you were trying to lower the cost of tuition. How does that happen?
Because there are already colleges that are lowering the cost of their graduate programs because
what are those colleges?
There's a college in California, University of California in Irvine, and Purdue University in Indiana.
And is it for business or for nursing?
They have lowered them right now, and for their business programs.
Yeah, but we're talking about nursing, ma'am.
Well, I hope that they'll look at other programs to reduce
business
their cost.
is not something that you had an impact on.
I don't have control over which programs they're doing, but if they have fewer applicants coming into their universities and they realize part of the reason is because their cost is too high, they will lower those costs.
I don't think that is how it works.
It is exactly how it works.
That is not how it works.
It is
Your
supply-
your
it is supply
specific
and
job
demand. It is supply
is
and
your
demand.
specific job is to try to make sure, as the head of the Department of Education, to make education accessible for Americans. When you create policies that make education unreachable for Americans that want that education, then you are failing at your job.
No, when there have not been caps on programs and universities have been allowed to charge whatever they wanted, and the student loan program allowed them to borrow up to whatever that university said was the cost, it was time to take action and to put caps in place that are going to
but your caps only create a funnel through the private borrowing system.
That's not true.
Yes, that is what it will do. How else
It's
would somebody, if
putting the
if I wanted to get a professional degree
Ah.
and I'm capped and I can't borrow, then I have to, from a public source, then I have to go private.
And
And that is what your administration is really trying to do, is trying to
No.
help enrich others on the backs of the American people. I yield back.
This hearing centered on a serious issue. How do we make higher education affordable without allowing student debt to spiral out of control? Representative Ilhan Omar focused on the nursing shortage, pointing to projections that Minnesota could face a shortage of roughly 30,000 nurses over the next 4 years. She argued that limiting federal loans for certain graduate programs could make an existing workforce problem even worse. And on the surface, that sounds like a reasonable concern. America absolutely needs qualified nurses, teachers, and other professionals. But the important question is whether unlimited federal borrowing is actually the solution. Education Secretary Linda McMahon challenged Omar's premise. She explained that nursing wasn't removed from an existing professional degree classification. Instead, the new policy establishes borrowing limits based on how federal law defines professional degrees. That's an important distinction. McMahon also argued that the broader problem is the cost of higher education itself. For years, students have been able to borrow large amounts of federal money to cover whatever universities charge. And when students can access more federal loans, colleges can have less incentive to control tuition and other costs. Omar wasn't convinced. She pressed McMahon on how these loan caps would actually make nursing education cheaper. McMahon pointed to universities that have already reduced the cost of some graduate programs, suggesting that colleges could respond to lower demand and borrowing limits by bringing their prices down. Omar fired back that the examples being discussed involve business programs, not nursing. That is where this debate gets especially interesting. Both sides are talking about affordability, but they're approaching the problem from completely different directions. Omar's argument is essentially that restricting access to federal loans could make professional education harder to obtain. McMahon's argument is that continuing to provide virtually unlimited federal borrowing helps sustain the very high prices that make education unaffordable in the first place. Then came the moment that really stood out. Omar told McMahon, "I don't think that is how it works." McMahon immediately pushed back. Omar argued that the Education Department's responsibility is to make education accessible, and that policies making education harder to finance could represent a failure of that mission. But from a taxpayer perspective, there's another question that deserves attention. Should the federal government keep increasing borrowing limits simply because universities continue increasing prices? That's the part of this debate that shouldn't be ignored. If Washington keeps making more money available without addressing why college costs continue rising, taxpayers and students can end up carrying the burden for decades. At the same time, McMahon's policy needs to be judged on its actual consequences. If legitimate nursing students are unable to complete necessary graduate training because federal financing is insufficient, that's a problem worth addressing. So the real solution shouldn't simply be Republicans versus Democrats. It should be about finding a way to lower education costs while making sure Americans can still enter critical professions. The government